Hello guys, welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be tackling a topic that a lot of Mortal Kombat fans, since Aftermath came out for Mortal Kombat 11, have been talking about and wondering about, and that topic is what is actually next for Mortal Kombat, the franchise, and where we'll be going into Mortal Kombat 12. So let's get into that. Now, of course, one main thing that we have to recognize when speculating about where Mortal Kombat 12 will go is seeing where Mortal Kombat 11 left us off. So, of course, Mortal Kombat 11 isn't actually done with the support and the content, and we still have Combat Pack 2 coming with Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate this November. So, some have speculated that instead of getting a Mortal Kombat 12, we are actually going to be getting another story expansion like we got with Aftermath. Now, at first, I will admit I didn't think that this was very plausible, as with the new DLC Combat Pack 2 coming out, they are giving a new title update, switching from Aftermath. Now it will be called Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, which, if you have played any, big AAA developer games where they have multiple DLCs come out, a lot of the times they will have a final edition, which is either the Game of the Year edition, but sometimes it'll be an Ultimate edition. And also with Mortal Kombat 3, they did a Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, so I thought that this would be the final edition of this game. Although I didn't consider that they could just make the new DLC without giving it a title update. And I do think this is very plausible, as there are two endings in Mortal Kombat 11, but that brings up the question, because they can't do both in a story expansion, and I don't think they'll have two more story expansions. So, which ending is going to lead into Mortal Kombat 12, and which will be the one we carry out on throughout the rest of the timeline? Now, at the end of Aftermath, Shang Tsung is wielding the crown and he's getting ready to reset time. But then we see Fire God Liu Kang walk through a portal and challenge him to a fight for the crown. Now, you can either choose to fight as Shang Tsung or Fire God Liu Kang. Now, if you choose to fight as Shang Tsung, he will defeat Liu Kang and end up resetting the timeline in his vision. We see in his ending that he is the ruler of time with a very cool new costume and Raiden and Fujin as his servants. Where Shang Tsung is sitting, it does appear to be where the Elder Gods used to exist, and so it appears he made himself the singular Elder God of this universe, where Raiden and Fujin do his bidding, specifically Dark Raiden, and they come back and tell him that they have conquered Netherrealm, Outworld, and I believe Chaos Realm. So that does lead off to an interesting story potential, where we could see evil controlled versions of some of our favorite combatants against maybe like a rebellion of characters that we did not see in Mortal Kombat 11. Now, if you choose to play as Liu Kang for the final battle, he will actually beat Shang Tsung and take the crown, reset the timeline in a more peaceful manner, and it'll take us to what appears to be Shaolin Temple, where we see a bunch of Shaolin monks doing training exercises, and then we get to see the Great Kung Lao, which is very cool, and Fire God Liu Kang approaches him and essentially tells him about the Mortal Kombat tournament. So it appears that in this timeline, Fire God Liu Kang is going to be training the Great Kung Lao to be his chosen one in the Mortal Kombat tournament. Well, now, of course, this brings us to our major question that we will be talking about in this video, is which ending is actually canon? Now, usually you would assume with a situation like this that the good ending would automatically be canon, but when you actually look at it in depth, the bad ending does leave off on more of a cliffhanger, technically. Now, what I mean by this is that when you look at the Fire God Liu Kang ending, it kind of leaves us off in familiar territory. Liu Kang goes and meets the Great Kung Lao, and if we're honest, we can kind of assume where the story is going to go from here. Liu Kang will probably train the Great Kung Lao as his chosen one, and he'll beat Goro in the tournament and become the winner of the Mortal Kombat tournament. That's probably what will happen. We could kind of assume that. But when we look at the Shang Tsung ending, we pretty much have no idea what is happening. It's pretty much unwalked territory, and we really have no basis on what to expect from whatever is happening in that ending. But while the Shang Tsung ending is more out there and we really don't know what's happening, it's also at the same time kind of familiar. If I had to take a guess on what a story like this would play out, how the story like this would play out, I would imagine it'd probably be Shang Tsung, being the ruler, Raiden, Fujin as his servants, and we'd see familiar Mortal Kombat characters try to overthrow him and reset the timeline how it is. So, in concept, it may seem that it is more out there, but I feel like in execution, it actually would be more familiar to us in the end, for we haven't actually had a video game about the Great Kung Lao and that whole time period. They're always set more around, the same. They vary a little bit, but usually we have the same characters, where I feel like if we follow the Great Kung Lao's ending, it will make for more exploration and more, creativity on their end. Now, I'd like to clarify, this is not me saying that the Shang Tsung ending is bad, not at all actually. I think it's very cool, but I don't know if it would make for a great full Mortal Kombat game. I think that for story expansion, it would actually be very great. I think maybe give Melina, Rain, the new DLC characters, maybe you add Havoc in there, as he's hinted at quite a bit in Mortal Kombat 11. I think you give them some chapters, and you could maybe give that an Elseworld kind of what-if storyline. If that's like a alternate timeline that could have happened for, the whole NetherRealm Mortal Kombat trilogy is a lot about timelines. But I think that one thing we haven't really considered is, with Mortal Kombat 12, are we actually going to be entering a new era for Mortal Kombat? Now, if you're not really familiar with the way Mortal Kombat, the series, is structured, it is very much made up of different eras in the series. Of course, you got the classic era, which is Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, and maybe even 4, you could throw in there. Those are the originals. They, are the baseline for what the Mortal Kombat franchise is kind of built off of. The first 3 were 2D, arcade, and the fourth one was also arcade, but the fourth one introduced a kind of janky version of 3D, which is further expanded on in the 5th game, which was Deadly Alliance, which was the beginning of the 3D era for Mortal Kombat, which was, it kind of expanded on the already existing lore, introducing new characters and new concepts, which led all the way through Mortal Kombat Armageddon. And then after that, we got Mortal Kombat vs. DC, which isn't really part of any era, but if I had to put in one, it'd probably be the 3D era. And then, because that game is 3D, but then we go into the NetherRealm era, or the NRS era, as many people like to call it, where after the original company that made Mortal Kombat, Midway, got bought out by Warner Brothers, it was transformed into NetherRealm Studios, or NRS, and their first game was simply titled Mortal Kombat, and it was a reboot of sorts. Although it did still exist in the same continuity, it reset the timeline, going back to Mortal Kombat 1, and that game was telling the story of Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, but it mixed up the story as it went along, and by the end, we saw pretty much all of the characters die, and then that went through Mortal Kombat X and Mortal Kombat 11, and with Mortal Kombat 11, the ending does feel kind of finite. If you ask me, it kind of ends off this timeline, because at the end of the story, no matter which one, the timeline does get reset. So it does feel like we are going into a new age, a new era, as Chronica does say in the story, for Mortal Kombat. So I think that, if this is technically going to be a new era for Mortal Kombat, of course, one of the things that defines the different eras is gameplay, but I don't really know how they would shake up the gameplay, because I do prefer the 2D, but, that could be a discussion for another day. But I do think if it's going to be a new era for the story, I do think that the Great Kung Lao Liu Kang ending feels like we're going into a new era more than the Shang Tsung one. Now, I have seen some people say that the Fire God Liu Kang ending wouldn't work as a Mortal Kombat 12 because it would pretty much get rid of all of the existing Mortal Kombat characters. And while, yes, it would get rid of some characters that, were not alive at the time, you might be surprised by how many Mortal Kombat characters actually were alive during the time of the Great Kung Lao and the, early Mortal Kombat tournaments. Now, some major characters that were alive during this time period were Raiden, Shang Tsung, Kitana, Sindel, Goro, Jade, Fujin, Shinnok, Onaga, and possibly Quan Chi. There are probably some more characters that were alive at the time that I'm forgetting, but those were just some of the characters that, I could remember off the top of my head that were alive during that time. Now, of course, from that list of characters that I just said, there are missing quite a few notable main characters that would have to be in a Mortal Kombat game, like Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Johnny Cage, characters like that for the most part have been in every game. Maybe not Johnny Cage, but definitely Scorpion and Sub-Zero. And I do actually think I have a workaround that they could fit into the game, Mortal Kombat 12, to, work around this issue. I think a pretty simple solution to this issue that we have is, the Hanzo Hasashi and Bihan were not the first, Shirai Ryu and, I'm losing the name of Sub-Zero's clan at the moment, but they weren't the first, to don that mantle. So, technically, we could have another, Shirai Ryu member to take the place of Scorpion, from the past, almost like, a ancient version of Scorpion, or, of Sub-Zero, a new Cryomancer, to take that mantle, because they weren't the first. Maybe Scorpion, because he was, he was reborn by Quan Chi, but definitely for Sub-Zero, and I think you can make it work for Scorpion as well, and possibly you could try to do it with some of the other characters that are missing. You could have, Johnny Cage's ancestor with the green glow, although I don't know if that would work as well, because I do think one of the main things that make Johnny Cage work is his, overwhelming and charming personality. So, I do think you'd have to find a different workaround for characters like that, but, even like Sonya, you could technically have like one of her ancestors be there, although I don't know how interesting that'd be, but I'm sure you could find a workaround to have them. Maybe, I don't know if I'd want to resort back to time travel, as I do think that we've kind of already been there and done that with Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat 11, but I'm sure they could come up with something. Now, I do actually think that the concept of taking this franchise back to the original Mortal Kombat tournaments and kind of seeing how they played out with the Great Kung Lao, because we haven't actually seen him in a Mortal Kombat game, as a playable character. So I do think that's an interesting concept. So we could take that and also bring back some characters that are dead. We could shape a new Mortal Kombat, version of this. So I do think that can actually work as a video game potential. And also it can lead to some new, original characters. And also maybe you could bring in some characters, because with Mortal Kombat 9, though they did go back to Mortal Kombat 1 technically, they did still keep some characters that weren't actually in that tournament. So you could technically do that with this. Change it up a little bit. You could have some characters that maybe weren't, in the original Mortal Kombat tournament there, have them just be there because they are fan favorites, And I do think that it could work, and it'd make for an interesting story mode. It can make for interesting, stages, and, it would have a completely different, vibe to it and aesthetic than all the previous Mortal Kombat games, and I do think it has some serious potential, even going into, a sequel, carrying on out from this point, and kind of making its new legacy, because for the most part, the Mortal Kombat games have been very similar. Liu Kang is always the chosen one, and we always have, the same group of characters. The 3D era did shake this up a bit by killing Liu Kang, introducing characters, to take up his place in multiple games. But, I do think that, I don't really know if any of them worked as well as Liu Kang, so I think that this is a great opportunity to, have Liu Kang there as Fire God Liu Kang, training his apprentice, the Great Kung Lao, who is already a fan favorite, though not being in many games, so people will probably be more welcoming to give him a chance. And in terms of what this game would actually be called, I feel like they would want to go with a simplistic title, probably, but I do think it would be cool to bring back the subtitles for the new game, because we didn't have that in the original trilogy classic. It was just Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2, all the way up to 4. And then for the 3D era, we got, Deadly Alliance, Deception, Armageddon, which is cool, but then we went back to, just the numbers with Mortal Kombat X, being 10, and then Mortal Kombat 11. I do think it'd be cool to bring back the, subtitles, and maybe you could have it be as simple as just the Mortal Kombat tournament, saying it is the first Mortal Kombat tournament. But you could come up with something cooler than that, I'm sure you could come up with some cool ideas for a cool title for, almost a prequel of sorts to the actual Mortal Kombat franchise. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this. I do think that this would be a cool concept for, the new era going forward in Mortal Kombat, taking it back to the very past, not Mortal Kombat 1, before that, all the way back to the era of the Great Kung Lao. And, maybe I'll make another video on this, talking about, how would the game actually play, what would the story be. If I come up with some cool ideas, maybe I'll make that video. But, I feel like also the Shang Tsung ending could work. If I come up with some cool ideas, maybe I'll make a video on that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and see you guys later. Bye.